Well, hello there. Yes, I know last night didn't happen. Well, here last morning, maybe, or afternoon, I'm not sure. Do apologize, but every once in a while that's going to happen. The world can become a little overwhelming, and that's what happened. Work was work, and also school was school. That's university, of course. And, well, nothing happened after that. But we're back tonight, and there aren't going to be many of those interruptions. And I know everybody has been sitting there going, okay, you did the Sunday story. And you left us kind of hanging with, what the lady is going to do next, or is she going to do something next, or is somebody else going to do something? I get that. Don't worry, we're going to get this story all sorted and straightened out and fixed and in its right order. You'll be amazed. At least I think you will. Are you enjoying this story? Certainly love your comments that I am getting, but I'll take more. So, enough of that self-ramble, and we'll move into wisdom, and I was thinking about that today. It's just, again, God keeps flowing it. Like I said, it's from His infinite space, it isn't mine. I'm just borrowing it as I borrow everything. Oh, I guess that's the wisdom. I borrow everything. Yes, I do. I had a moment in my history where some way, somehow, as Paul would say, in the body, out of the body, in the spirit out of the spirit? I don't know, but somehow I ended up with a few extra years. Yes, years. But in those periods of time, somehow, I learned some things at a temple. I learned about our reality on how we look at things. But one of the greatest lessons I ever learned from that temple, and yes, I was learning from a temple in China that somehow was talking about God. Isn't that amazing? As I said, in the body, out of the body, in the spirit, out of the spirit. My body believes so, and my body carries the memory. So I'd have to say body, but who knows? It was definitely a God thing, something like Philip being transported, who knows how far. We'd have to do a measurement on that one. And many other things that have happened that, of course, we haven't heard about in the Bible, but have been noted. So we're here. You know, there's a story behind this, and maybe one day you'll get that in one of those stories in one of my other YouTubes that I'm hoping to start putting up stuff shortly. We're working on getting this organized and sorted, so stay tuned. As far as the wisdom goes, it's very simple. That, they called themselves the Genkai, which just meant followers of God. Some ancient language, not necessarily Chinese. I don't know. I don't know how many years of thousands I was back or forward or whatever, but I was there. I did arrive back home through a very old wooden door, which I probably would have been very upset at the monk if he would have told me he was sending me home after all of that. Back to whatever I was before I started. With all the knowledge, of course. The Genkai had this very interesting belief as far as God went, and that was that everything must change. But we're not going to go into that tonight. The thing that we're going to go into is that we're borrowing things. Just imagine if God owned, let's say, your laptop. Now, for some of you, you'd be cringing because you know what's on it, but that's okay. God can still own it, and He can help you cleanse it, purify it, and get it back to whatever it's meant to be. We all have moments. We all fall flat on our face. That's why we require God in the first place. But how about this? If it's God's and you're borrowing it, then God is looking after it. Isn't that cool? Wouldn't that be amazing to have God looking after things instead of you having to? Being worried and in fear. and all those other things that the enemy loves us to get into over our objects. I mean, I'm borrowing these things. I've lived through four fires, two or three moments where everything was just taken. Came home to an empty house. Hi. Okay, so my duffel, my sword, my Bible, kind of the beat up one that's going to go in a box one day just to give it reverence of what it's gone through. I have a new one, a few ones, but they're around. But I have another little one that's like a Marine Bible. I love it. What version do I read? Sometimes King James. Most of the time, that's what's in my head. Many others because there is always wisdom in each. Here's the thing, but if we're borrowing the objects, like you see behind me, that nice picture, the thing about the sword, maybe you can't see it unless you really get in there, but yeah. And yes, that is two Durangas and a yin and yang symbol, and in the middle is, that's God. That's how I was taught. Those are the two forces that we deal with. One we have to put back into a seed. Oh no, I'm going into more wisdom, ain't I? That's what happens around me. But anyway, getting back to this borrowing thing. So if God decides that that isn't no longer mine, then it's not mine. It goes wherever it goes. Doesn't matter what the object is. And if we live that way, then it's God looking after it. Now that's an infinite being with infinite power, with infinite wisdom, with infinite understanding, with infinite knowing. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? That being looking after your thing instead of you looking after that thing, and you know how good you look after that thing. Oh, oops, crunch. Noof. Well, there goes that. And no, the special warranty that I put on it does not cover you kicking it across the room accidentally. Well, that's the end of it. I have footballed my poor phone, and it has been in an otter because that's what God told me to get. But even in an otter, there are points of no return. Yet I have gone and got the thing. Yes, I have some interesting difficulties sometimes with coordination, and other times I am incredibly coordinated. It's weird, isn't it? Well, goes with everything else I go through. But the reality is I've gone and got that phone and it works. It's not my phone, it's God's phone. It's not my computer, it's God's computer. If he says it goes there, then it goes there. He's going to give me something else better, usually. So just think of that. I won't labor this much longer, but just think of that. What if you just were borrowing from God and all your things were safe within his arms until he decides that they are to be somewhere else? Whatever that means. Interesting thoughts. I'm just going to call this one Borrowing Things, Thoughts from a Temple, who knows when, or something like that. I'm trying to shorten my titles, so maybe it'll be just Borrowing Things, and you can find out the rest when I put that, yeah, in the description. Wouldn't that be nice? Working on it. It's going to get better, but I'm enjoying this. Oops, we have it. There. It's supposed to be black, not white. Oh well. Live it is. As Yoda would say, it's always live. You just didn't know it. Somebody is always watching. Yes. That's from a book. You might be able to find it at some point. One of the many Star Wars books out there. Uh-huh. Yeah, now everybody's just scrambling for it. That's true. Anyway, enough of this funny stuff that we're doing. Let's get to that point where we figure out who I is and how you get a hold of me. So, this is Eric at starthealing.me. Isn't that easy? Start healing, which we all wish to do. .me, of course, you, me. So, this is Eric at starthealing.me. Eric at starthealing.me. Eric at starthealing.me. me, just in case. And you can reach out. I'll send you a link. And you can use that link and book an appointment. That's without cost to you at all. We'll talk about the rest when you get there, but mostly it's there for you to have this amazing space where you can converse and talk, and maybe the wisdom that flows through me can be helpful to you. That's my wish, that you would hear from the one that created you. Yes, God. Well, let's leave it there. So we've had an interesting time. I mean, God, Father, that's how I look at him. That's he's been that way for since wow. Wow, that's a story. We'll get to that one. But anyway, the reality is here is that this is a healing story. It's actually working with you and helping you and, to understand sanctuary, sanctum, you know, being safe, being secure. Now we have a whole world doing this. Now the lady is learning about certain people or just using the wisdom of God to flow amongst her people. She's kind of the quasi leader. Of course, God is the big guy, but she's kind of the earthbound bit. So she just, left the blacksmith and she seems to be heading somewhere very purposeful. There's a young woman in the corner, one of the many corners of the city because of the way it does, and she has chosen to be in Biggs and his ladies' zone, even though she's small. She's created a little hut all on her own. And she's talked to the walls and got her little place. And she's quite happy there, but she hasn't ever talked to anyone, ever. In fact, the lady doesn't remember her coming in, but she must have come in. She was able to talk to the walls. So that must have been how she got here. She was noticed, and it was given that there would be a conversation at some point. But she hadn't known when, but she was felt like she should go over there. And as she was going over, Big said, "Oh, you noticed her? I don't mind her there, by the way. She seems to be keeping to herself and not being any trouble at all. And thank you for everything, by the way. And I kind of have a half hope that maybe we can get back to our real bees, but till then, this is working." Went back in his little dome that wasn't so little. And she kept coming, and when she got to a certain point, well, she knew of a way to introduce herself. A very interesting, almost learned from a tradition of the first ones, the First Nations, on one of her many, many spaces where she stayed. So she went up so far, and she had prepared for this in her bag, and she pulled out a little tent. That's what it was, with a little bedroll, and she rolled the bed into the tent. She set herself out there and she put out a little fire, and she took out a piece of meat, and this was a special piece of meat. It was from somewhere else, and it was one of the few pieces she had left, but she felt like she should cook it, so she did. She used spices from her bag and threw some potatoes in the fire and then laid down and waited. In a little while, the lady that was in the corner came out and looked at her and went right back in. Okay. She goes, okay, this is going to be a little bit of time. That's all right. I've got it right now. And this is an important thing I'm doing, so I'm going to stay here. So when the potatoes were ready and she poked them and they were, and she was like, wow, that's nice. And she pulled them out and she put one on a little tray that she pulled out of her, of course, bag. That bag is amazing, isn't it? Everyone wants the bag. Admit it, but it's okay. The bag is useful at this moment. So she pulls out this little tray and puts a potato on it and puts half of that wonderful meat that she had on there and the spices in a little sauce cup that she pulls again out of the bag. And she leaves it there. In fact, she moves it about 4 feet away from the fire, and she's about 12 feet away from the fire at this point. But people go, how did that happen? Well, she's also moving forward to show that there's something here. And she does that very simply by going so far and kneeling on the ground, one knee to earth. And she sits there for a few minutes, and the lady comes out and looks at her, and she points at the food. She doesn't say anything and says, yours, when you wish. And then goes back to her tent, you know, pulls out a few more pieces of wood, of course, from that bag. There it goes again. Wonderful bag. These are special wood from a special place. Burns sweet and lovely and slow. She takes a bigger piece of meat out. Yeah, that looks like real. Well, we wouldn't call it real, but would we? Bacon? And it looks like it's uncooked, so it's about to get cooked for the night. She somehow comes up with a shell and puts it over, and this allows the heat to flow through a fan. Interesting device. At that moment, the trader is way over there waving, going, I like one of those. When I know that you're doing something, but when later, okay? I like one of those. So she nods at him, and then she just literally goes into her tent, and she's tired. She's been walking all day, and she lays down and rests. At some point, she hears noise near the tray, and the tray and everything disappears. A little while later, the tray returns, and it's empty, washed, clean, and empty. And so the next morning, she gets up, and out of her bag comes this little thing, and she takes off the smoker carefully, again with gloves that come from where? That little bag of hers. It ain't so little. And she puts the smoker aside, and she puts this little, well, looks very much like a griddle, probably made of cast. And she starts heating it up, and in a few minutes, she's cooking some eggs, and that smoked bacon is being sliced by a very sharp knife, of course, from the bag, and the cutting board, of course, from the bag, and the little kitchen table that she's got herself sitting beside herself now, cutting the bacon, of course, from the bag. And so she's made breakfast, and again, she takes a portion and puts it on the tray, and again, she does that 4 foot thing and moves the tray out 4 feet and goes out about a little farther and kneels to earth and says nothing. Eventually, the lady comes out, and again she says, yours, and again retreats back to her tent and lays down again. And when she's just laying there meditating, talking to God, and she hears this little rustle, and then she hears the tray being picked up, and off it goes. She knows. A little while later, it comes out all nice and clean again, set by the fire. At this point, she isn't going to be smoking anything more, and she has 5 or 10 of those inside her bag, so she teleports that one over to the trader, who just giggles in glee that he's got another item that he's always wished for. And she also teleports him over some nice apple wood, and he's really happy about that. But other than those things, she just very simply sits in her tent and prays for this person. She continues this operation of making food, putting it on the tray, letting the person pick it up, going out so far, putting her knee to earth, waiting for the person to acknowledge her, going back, letting her know it's hers. And this goes on for a couple of weeks. Eventually, Douglas kind of ports himself in small form. That means wee one, this small enough to be in the back, kind of like a mini me, and says, how's it going? Well, I think she's starting to figure out that I might be trustworthy. I have to figure out how she knew to use the walls, but that's okay. At that moment, another mini me from the guy that apparently created all of that. Oh, this is one of those that has been wandering here since the Great Wars. She's older than she looks, and she's very traumatized. But you're reaching her, which I couldn't even do. And with that, he pops out, and so does Douglas, because there's no food on the tray, but the lady is coming out. And so, you know, to see what's going on, and then goes back in her tent carefully because she notices the woman by the wall is now walking out with something. So she just goes back into her tent and lays down. The woman sets a really nice smelling sweet bun and a cup of tea on the little tray that she had by the fire and says, yours, and scurries back in the house. The lady gets up and says, thank you, and enjoys the sweet bun and tea. This goes on for a little while. There's offerings from each side, and it's been about 4 weeks. She knew it was going to take time, effort, and energy to bring this to. And she wasn't invading this person's space. But at a certain point, she realized she could move a little closer, so she packed everything away, got rid of the fire, and moved about 4 feet closer. Set everything up again, and went back and laid down to rest. In about an hour, she got up. She was peckish, so she pulled some other things from the bag. And these things were unique and wonderful, at least to her. She had discovered them on one of the many Earths that she'd been on. They were called hot dogs, and she even had the buns. This was her super treat. She didn't know when she was going to get them again, but she wished to share them, so she made four, two for her and two for the lady that was in the wall. Because that's kind of where she lived. She lived in this little hovel that was connected to the wall, and somehow the wall had grown around it. Well, you know what's going to happen here, right? We've gone as far as we can go right now. And we'll leave it there. What do you think about that? Isn't that a nice way to introduce yourself to somebody that's a bit skitterish? Just a thought. So you require a blessing, and probably a good one. I mean, you didn't get one yesterday from me, so that's let's double that. So let's double everything. Double joy, double peace, of course, unexplainable and overflowing for the joy, and great hope, doubled, of course, double abundance, And whatever else God wishes to double to you, and oh my goodness, that could be a lot, with that paintbrush of his. And according to his will and wish, and according to your will and wish, this can be. Let's have a little word of prayer. We come before you, O Father, Spirit, and Son, and we are so internally grateful that this is exactly how you woo us sometimes. And yes, this is emotional for me because you have done this. You found me when I scattered and brought me back. That's what I ask for whoever is listening, that you bring them back. You show them your love. You open the doors. You show them the truth, as you did to me. And I ask that every single one that's whatever part of the relationship they're in with you, if they're just introducing themselves, beginning the conversation, or if they're deeper or deeper or deeper in, whatever that is, whatever it might be, just be with them in that space and show them, as you've shown me, how much you love them. Push back the enemy that attacks and wishes to laden them with all of the things that they can never recover from on their own. You, your great love casts out fear. That's the perfect love. You bottle the tears. You see every hurt and every anguish. Help these people to heal, Father, Spirit, Son. And I will leave it there. Give them courage, give them strength, give them grace and mercy in abundance. And we will say thankful, grateful, gratitude, thankful, grateful, gratitude, thankful, grateful, gratitude, standing in awe and honor and respect, allowing all glory to flow to Father, Spirit, Son. This is, and so this is. So when you rest, rest well. When you wake, wake well, and know that your path is well lit by God. Blessings.